Well, hey everyone, my name's Chris Harelson. I'm a senior campus coordinator with Students for Liberty. The illustrious Elizabeth Hayes is helping me to record this bad boy, this presentation on identifying and engaging new leaders. So what I hope to accomplish is to communicate to you the best practices and the best ways to really build the movement in your locality, at your campus, among the group of campuses that you're over, so that you can be successful and so that we can move the movement forward. So that is sort of the goal. This is a beautiful utopian society that someday we're all going to live in if you do your job, right? So the goal here is to what your goal should be is to build a network of students that are excited about liberty, that recruit more students to the movement, and that drives the narrative of libertarianism on campus and in the community. So right now, just plaster that on your forehead. Consider that as your job. That's what your whole goal is to bring more people into the movement and then develop them so that they are more effective to bring even more people into the movement to fight for liberty. So how do you do that? How are you going to find new leaders that are going to recruit other people? Number one, you yourself need to be active. You have to go out and hold activism events. You have to get sign-ups. You have to hold follow-up meetings. And you have to get people in your immediate network. It all starts with you. So you need to follow up with them once you get sign-ups, and then you need to get them doing something. And then I'll go over these tips and best practices toward the end. So, number one, how do you be active? A couple of tips are hold a weekly meeting at a consistent time and then get sign-ups. Even if they've already signed up, have them sign up again. You'll never know which new signups you'll catch. So how do you do that? You want to be active as much as possible. A couple of tips for that. You want to hold a weekly meeting at a consistent time and have a sign-up clipboard there. Put that sign-up clipboard in the attendees' hands. Sometimes it just sits around, people forget about it, you start eating pizza, you start talking, you're nervous, and you just want to be friendly and make the meeting go smoothly. Don't forget to collect your data, because this is how you're going to follow up with them. This right here is how you start to build a movement. This is how you get them to the next meeting and to the one after that, and this is how you get them to help table at your next activism event. So in addition to doing that, you're going to want to hold events. Some events are you could host speakers, you could show a screening of a documentary or some other movie, debate an opposing student club on campus, host a forum, and of course, I'm sure you're all familiar with all the different kinds of activism events that you could host. Again, put the sign-up clipboard in the people's hands. So when they come by your table, put it in their hands, because you have to get their contact information. Because what you're going to do is you're going to not just send out a mass email to everyone and hope that they actually open their school email account and read the email, but you're going to text them and you're going to call them as well. So because that is how you get people to your meeting, and that's how you get them to eventually take on more responsibility and become leaders in the liberty movement. Email professors and department heads. I have a template that I send out to professors and say, hey, my name's X, Y, and Z. I'm a new chapter president of this club at X campus, and we're looking for more students to join our club. Here's what we're looking for. Here's what we do. Can you recommend any students that would be interested? And of course, being the outspoken libertarians that they are, they're always debating the entire class, probably by themselves, and the professor is going to know who those students are. And So they'll be able to make some good recommendations for you. Additionally, you'll want to put flyers up and posters up on campus to advertise your club. So how do you get people to sign up? How do you find more people? How do you continue to build your email, not just email list, but your contact list? You just do it. You just ask them for it. Don't think, oh, well, I don't have a clipboard here, so I can't get this person's contact information. You could always, I know this sounds crazy, and you may think it's crazy, but you could say, hey, what's your number? Or what's your phone number? Hey, I'll need to follow up with you about this event that we're doing. And, just ask them for their contact information. So, and then don't forget who they are. Keep a list for yourself, which I'll get to that here in a second. So, point number 2, follow up immediately. If you don't do this, you will lose. If you don't get them back in to your network, then you're not building a network. You're not identifying more leaders, and you're not engaging or creating new leaders. And you're not even building a club. You're not even going to have any members. Maybe 1 or 2 of people that are in your immediate leadership, but you won't continue to grow and become a robust organization on campus. So I've just given some sample. I've given a sample call and a sample text that you might want to use if you don't know where to start. Things you could say when you call someone, a text that you could send out. So feel free to revisit this presentation to use those templates or those examples. So number 3, so far up to this point, you have found them, you've gotten their contact information, you've probably talked with them at the table, you've started a budding friendship or relationship, and you've contacted them. So now they're going, oh, wow, I can't believe these people actually contacted me. No student club has ever done that before. All I do is sign up, and then that's it, and I never hear from them. So they're starting to look at you as a more legitimate organization and starting to view you and view your organization as more credible, and so they'll be more likely to come to your events and get involved. So now it's your job to get them acting, to get them involved, get them doing something. You want them to be stuck to your organization. Any barriers that could prevent them from being involved, whether it's lack of friends, lack of familiarity, confusion, they're not clear as to exactly what the goal is of your organization, what the goal of your meeting is, what the goal of your event is. You want to break down all those barriers, and then you want to give them some stake in your organization. Give them property in your organization. So that could start small. You could be, okay guys, we are planning a activism event, and we need someone to go pick up the candy. If you would much rather pick up the candy yourself, I understand, because that a lot of times can be a lot easier, but you're missing out on an opportunity to give somebody else responsibility that's going to get them more involved in your club. So, I know it's a lot easier to just do things yourself a lot of times, but be sure to delegate, because as you become a better delegator, you'll be able to accomplish a lot more, and you'll be engaging more people that will help share the burden of your club as your club continues to grow. And before you know it, you've got a list of 100 people that come to your club every week that you have to call through. So you'll want to have, right now what you're doing is you're starting to train leaders to take on more responsibility, to shoulder that burden with you. So I've got some good quotes here to help you remember some things. Human action, right? That's what this is all about. You need to act. This action is not going to come from SFL's HQ back in DC. It needs to happen on the ground. You have to start acting, right? If you ever have a question about how much activity is too much, just remember what my good friend Ludacris here says: act a fool, right? Just keep acting. If you're thinking, well, should we go, right now we have 1 meeting a month, should we go to 2 a month? Yes. Just keep acting, and then keep getting more people in, and then keep building that contact list, keep building those friendships, and keep building your personal sphere of influence. So here's a tip. Well, 3 to be exact. Don't get discouraged. When you have your first meeting and no one shows up but you, and you're also late to your own meeting, don't worry. It's okay, because it's not going to stay that way. Remember, go back, use that time to call people, say, hey, we're hosting our meeting right now. Are you on your way? Even if you know that they're not on their way, give them a call, because you want to build that relationship. The people that do come to your first meeting, and the people that come to your second and to your third and to your fourth, anyone that comes into your sphere of influence, into the network, they are your new best friends. You contact them regularly, you put them in a Facebook chat, and you share funny memes with them, and you just continue to keep that communication flowing and continue to build that friendship. It's when that communication stops that people fall off the bandwagon and they're lost, and they're like, yeah, I'm a chapter president of this school, but I don't have any chapter leaders and nobody ever talks to me. You have to keep that communication flowing, because you don't want that to happen. You don't want people to fall off of the bandwagon. So here's where action and here's where responsibility and accountability are so important. Without you, this entire student club, this entire student organization is going to fall apart. You don't want it to stay that way. You want it to be without, you want to change the sentence from without you, it will all fall apart, to without leadership, it will all fall apart. Right now, for a lot of you, at the beginning of starting student clubs, you're the only leader. Maybe there's 1, 2, maybe 3 of you, and you have to provide the leadership, you have to provide the operational support to make things, to move things forward. Without that, nothing is going to move forward. You want to build other leaders around you so that you can say, well, without our leadership team, it will fall apart. And then you want to build that out to say, without our membership, this would all fall apart. And without our incoming leaders, there would be no future. So here is probably the most important thing of this presentation. Keep a list of all your leaders and also all your members. So for my school, we have a Google Doc that has 2 tabs. One is a members tab and one is a email list tab. This is an example of what you might find. So first name, last name, their email and their phone number, and then notes about them. It's important to keep the last contact date so that you know when was the last time you contacted them. And then I also have a last reply date that we just added to our Google Doc, so we know who's getting back to us and who's not getting back to us, who's interested and who's not, so that we know who's more serious, and we can start to hone in on identifying those people that want to be involved. Go through this list every time you have an activism event and every time you hold a meeting, which I would suggest is weekly. So yep, that means that you call this entire list, and it's going to grow once a week or twice a month if you're holding meetings once every, or 2 times a month. Call them, send out an email at the beginning of the week. As you get to the next day, maybe the day before the meeting, you're going to want to call them and then send them a text an hour or 2 before the actual meeting starts and say, hey, you coming tonight? It's Chris with Students for Liberty. Just want to let you know our meeting's tonight. See you soon. It's in room, whatever, 301. And so do that, and I promise you, you will have a ton more people show up. So keep their contact information and regularly use it. Always be looking at your Google Doc of people, and always be thinking of ways that you can contact them, engage them. Don't be weird. I'm not saying to be weird and overly contact them, but you always want to keep communication flowing as much as possible. So now you've got some leaders, you've got a group. Now, how are you going to turn them into becoming what you are, a campus coordinator or whatever it is. So you need to help them to become successful, bring them into the greater community, and build the movement. And what do I mean by building the movement? You need to provide other opportunities outside of SFL or whatever student organization you're working with. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So this slide is a little heavy on the text, but that's for a reason, because I want you to be able to go back to this and look at these bullet points and use them. So how can you help them to be successful? First of all, use your critical thinking skills and ask yourself, if I was a brand new leader, what would I need to know to be successful on my campus? Once you answer that question, give that to your new leader. If you say, well, I wouldn't even know how to start holding an activism event. Well, perfect. Now you've identified what that new leader may need. They need to know how to apply for an activism event, how to acquire materials. They need to know how to reserve the space. They need to know what materials they need, and they need to know how to set up a table, from what times are the best to recruit, stuff like that. That's all information that needs to be communicated and trained to new leaders. So you may want to craft emails for them, because a lot of students won't have the time to do it. So craft an email to send out to professors. I said I have a template that I've already written, and I just send it out to chapter presidents, and I say, hey, I call them, walk them through the process, and say, hey, just plug in your information here. Look up on your website econ professors, political science professors, philosophy professors, and send them this email. Go out and table and clipboard with them so that they can learn from your example. Help them to navigate the school bureaucracy, to reserve rooms and space. Send them flyer templates, and teach them how to do that, and say you'll probably want to go to your school, get this flyer approved, and then have them post it around campus. And the point here is to give them as much support as you can to relieve their burden, because they probably don't know what they're doing, right? And so you have to train them, you have to communicate to them, to teach them what they're doing. But don't do everything for them. You want them to gradually increase in responsibility, and you want them to gradually learn that they can do more than they are currently doing. You want them to, okay, this week you're going to buy candy, next week you're going to buy candy, and here's some materials for you to hold on to. Make sure you bring those because we're going to need them, or whatever you come up with. So you need to build a community, not just a network. Networks are static, they're impersonal, they're purely professional. You want to build a community. Be so focused on building a community that you can even be like this guy and found an entire ideology on communism. Not communism, but communityism. You see what I did there? So anyway, so create a community, keep it consistent, fun, and expanding. Or what differentiates a community from a network is communities are friends. Think way back to high school, when you had that table of friends that you would sit with. That is a community. I hope you did have a table of friends you would sit with. I didn't. I got to be envious and look at all the other people that were having fun with friends while I sat by myself. But hopefully you know what I'm referring to. That's what you want your club to be. But you don't want it to be cliquey. You want that table to eventually move to the next table, so that there's 2 tables of friends, 3 tables of friends, and before you know it, you take over the whole cafeteria. And by cafeteria, I mean world, because that's what we're doing. We're taking over. So build that kind of friendship amongst your leaders. So, and then continue to build the movement. This is what I mean by provide opportunities. You are building this organization. Ask yourself what it needs to move forward. What's the next step? It's also important to identify what the organization is. You're not just building SFL. You're building the Liberty Movement. So look for opportunities outside of SFL to get people involved, whether that's Young Americans for Liberty, Liberty in North Korea, Leadership Institute, local campaigns, other nonprofits and organizations. Look for opportunities in those organizations for your leaders to get involved. This will benefit you tremendously when you get to this point of student organizing, because not only will you have more opportunities for them to take on greater leadership and take on a greater role in the movement, but connecting with those organizations and building that network will provide greater opportunities for your club. You may contact a state-based policy think tank, and they'll be able to provide speakers for you. They may be able to provide grants and funding for you. They'll be able to connect you to other people in other organizations that will be able to provide other opportunities. So move your leaders into new opportunities. Say, hey, I know you're a new chapter vice president, and I have this awesome, say you're working with a YAL chapter. Say this person is a new chapter vice president, and you want them to become a Students for Liberty campus coordinator. You call them up, you send them a Facebook message, you say, hey, I've got this awesome opportunity. You'll give them the pitch. You get $500 per semester for student activism. It's not a lot more responsibility because you're already doing these things anyway in your role as vice president, as recruitment coordinator, as whatever they are. It doesn't matter. Say, hey, I'm going to send you a link right now. Apply to be a Students for Liberty campus coordinator. Use that same pitch to get them to move from chapter president or vice president or whatever they are to a YAL state chair. Use that same pitch for other opportunities. And identify what they want. Everybody, as you good economic libertarians know, everyone's value, what they value, varies. Their value is subjective, right? So one person may say, well, I want to go the free speech route and wind up working for an organization like FIRE. Another person may say, well, I minored in Arabic, even though I have no connection to that, and I want to work on the international scene. So that you might want to connect them to organizations that work with that. So also embrace your leaders as your equal. You're not better than them. In fact, you are here to serve them. You are here to promote them and move them forward and to help them. Can rely on them, rely on their input. You may think you know what's best for the club. You may think you have the answer to whatever challenge you're facing, and you might. That's good. That's fantastic. You might have the answer and maybe nobody else does because you've been around longer. But you don't want to miss the opportunity for them, for students who don't know, for students who don't have as much experience as you, to start to gain that experience, to start to utilize those critical thinking skills. So when you sit down as a club and say, all right, how are we gonna face this problem? You may think you have the answer, and you might, but guide them to that answer so that they discover it themselves. Don't just be a top-down authoritarian manager or chapter president or leader where whatever you say goes. Rely on them, and as you do so, you'll be teaching them to take over your position eventually, and you'll probably learn things from them. Always, always, always be training, and always, always, always be communicating. We take for granted a lot of the times, I feel, in student organizing. We think a student knows, we say, oh yeah, go hold an activism event. Okay, great, they're gonna hold an activism event. But that activism event will either flounder or it will never even happen because they don't know where to start. So always be training them on how to do things. Also, always be communicating with them, bring them into the network, don't let things fall apart. A leader is a team builder. You bring a team together and you help them to work together. You find out their strengths and then you help to organize them around a common goal to achieve it. You focus on building your club as a team. But the most basic unit of a team, the most basic unit of a society is an individual. So not only do you need to develop your team, you need to develop each individual member of your team. And as a leader, you need to cast a vision for them. You're the visionary. You say, okay, here's where I think we want to go. Here's the vision. You all agree with it? Are you on board? Because if they're not on board, you'll be 100% more likely to fail. So you need to get them bought into your vision and then lay down measurable and achievable steps to accomplish that vision. Here's a quote that I'll leave you with that I like. Honestly, where did I find this quote? I was just scrolling through Facebook and someone posted it and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And now I think about it all the time. So it says, chief executive leaders are high on task, high on consideration, high on developing others, have management principles, have leadership principles, and they shape strategy, which is the vision, mission, and values, and they focus on organizational change and establish the system itself. That is 100% what you're doing when you are developing a student club. You are establishing the system itself, you're developing others, you are accomplishing tasks. You need to be a high producer yourself. You're going to put in a lot of work, and that's okay, because you're going to learn a lot from it, and you're going to develop an amazing, awesome organization. You need to have a framework of principles and ideas through which you govern your actions, and then you shape the strategy relying on your team for two reasons. One, it's going to help them to become better leaders, and two, it's going to refine the strategy that you and your leadership team come up with. So that's the presentation. Hopefully you learned something. If you have any questions, you can contact me here at my email. If you want those email templates that I use, feel free to email me and request those, and I'd be happy to get those to you. Thanks so much.